Welcome to PAB 2011.
I didn't really think about it until Tom pointed it out that we really hadn't talked about ways to put these ideas together. And while I'm not going to show you specifically the way I do things, I thought I would discuss a few ways so that some of these concepts that we've talked about putting stories together actually kind of gives you some ideas that you can then use. And it became one of those oh yeah moments. And I'm going to credit this to Nancy Morris. Nancy Morris, who's here again from last year, she and I get together for coffee every now and then, and we had a conversation just this past week. And she talked about it's not aha, it's oh yeah. Or maybe she said it's oh yeah, not aha, one of those two. But, and it made sense to me because it really is, you always have this kind of knowledge. It's there, even if you're not aware of it. And then when you draw it up, it's like, oh yeah. Which to me, it seems more exciting. Right. And there's been a lot of really amazing ideas put in our head this weekend. And so I want to focus in on a few of them for what I'm going to try and make a sensical presentation. Focal points, fingerprints, and paleontology. So I'm going to bring together two ideas that I'm really excited about from this weekend. It's not to say that there aren't other exciting ideas from the weekend, but as it applies to what I want to talk about, I wanted to limit myself to three things. So I had to put my thing in, of course, which is the paleontology side, but focal points and fingerprints. A lot of the stuff that I've done in podcast production since I began has been about other people. So I started out with Electric Sky back in 2005. In I guess the first couple of episodes, I really didn't know what I was doing. And then once I started to realize what I wanted to do, I started to focus on people who I felt were fascinating or who had done fascinating things. So I interviewed them. I did these little mini, I was told I was too CBC sometimes, but I basically did CBC-inspired, really tightly edited, 10-minute shows that were either interviews or documentaries of some form that conveyed other people's ideas. It was all about other people. I geeked out on it. And it was always what I wanted to learn or hear about, but it was always about the other people. Then Bob and I started the Canadian Podcast Buffet. It was all about the Canadian podcast community. It was all about other people. And you're seeing the pattern now with the stuff that I produce. We organized podcasters across borders. It was about bringing together people. It was really all about the community. It was about other people. So after the original PAB, Andrea, my wife, who you may have met, if you haven't, she's over there. We started, on her suggestion, we put together our two passions. Mine was generating audio and producing audio programs, and hers was children's books. We put them together and we created this program called Just One More Book, and it was all about other people. It was about children's books, the people behind them, how to appreciate them. In a way, it was a bit about us, and it was really at that, as I start to think about this whole thing when I was putting this presentation together, that really, while the focal point was other people, we were really kind of telling our own story in a roundabout way, because we were talking about the stuff that we loved, we were talking about the people that we admired, and the creative projects that really made sense to us. So it was one of those oh yeah moments again, right? Maybe I should have called my presentation oh yeah. So there's three different ways of pulling content together. And I'm going to get to this idea of content more about us in a few minutes. But there's three ways of putting it together. One of them is kind of stream of consciousness. And I'm going to kind of throw this to what Christopher Griffin was talking about, which is just working with the material and building in the moment and creating. And I don't know how much planning you did when you actually crafted your house. I know you had drawn some diagrams, but of course once the concrete went up, it was gone. So a lot of it was just kind of in the moment. So another way of calling it maybe is the vomit, right? You just, everything that's in you, you put on the page. Oh. So the other style is more what Mark Poirier was talking about on Friday night, which is this pre-planning. And pre-planning doesn't necessarily mean storyboarding or all that stuff. It could be doing something that he and I were talking about, which is this in-camera idea. And this is an idea that I actually want to try out, which is this: if you have a story you want to tell, rather than shoot and then bring all your audio and then your video and you edit it post and you get all the pieces sequenced right and all that, kind of like when they shoot a movie out of sequence and all that. But shoot it in camera so that when you take it, you have your 10-second clip, your establishing shot, then you have your character introduction, you have all these different pieces. So shoot as much as you need and as much as you will use, and shoot them in sequence and then export, publish. right? Which seems, it's almost like that tell a story in 5 photographs. But rather than shoot 20 and pick the 5, shoot the 5. So I thought that was kind of an interesting idea. But it's not the way I've typically worked, because my brain doesn't work that way. I'm always afraid of missing the moment, right? So I'm the kind of guy who turns on the video camera for 8 hours and then goes back and figures out where the 2 minutes is that makes sense. So that's more of a post-production side, or something that Andrea helped me properly name paleontology, which is the idea is I just go out there and I grab everything and then I bring it. So it's kind of like a paleontology dig or an archaeological dig. You go out and you look and you have a wide field of view, and you start to dig and you expose the stuff. And maybe you're exposing bones, and that's fantastic, but you don't stop at the bones. You want to get some of the fossils. You want to see if there's samples of skin. You want all these pieces that pull all the stuff that's together here. And the bones might not all be in the right space, right? Millions of years of earth shifting. The spine might not be all in one fluid piece. It might be part of the spine here and part of the rib cage over here, and you got to go chase it down. So they bring all these pieces back to the lab, or lab. Do they call it a lab? I guess. Yes, they do. Okay, thank you. So they bring it back to the lab, and then they start to figure out what do they have, how do the pieces fit together, and how do they build it. And they don't just build it, they create a scene. They'll go to a museum, and they'll set it up. So you go, okay, that's what the dinosaur looked like without skin and organs, but this is the way it probably stood, this is the way it moved, this is the kind of surface that they may have stood on. And so you have the whole environment, rather than just the shell of the story, right? You now have something to look at. There's a story in that picture. There's a story in the bones, but the bones tell an even greater story when they're all together. And we created something called the Rock Stars of Breeding series, which was the first time I'd really brought together, and I'd never really done much video production before. It was the first time I really brought together my passion for audio, my interest in like Ken Burns style, doing something for the children's book community that hadn't been done before, which is kind of sexing it up with MTV style music and cutting and stuff like that. And we made this series. We collected 13 hours of video, 25 hours of audio, which overlapped with the video. So I had some good quality audio to work with as well, because the camera we were using wasn't particularly good. And over 350 hours, I created a 2.5-hour video series. Well, I guess it was video and audio series out of this essentially 13 hours of content that we'd gathered. So the archaeological dig came back to the lab, cut off the chaff, and it's this amazing iterative process. And you find out there really is a lot of crap that you capture, but you do it anyways. And there's a couple reasons why I wanted to show that video in particular, because first of all, if two people as amateur as we are, inexperienced as we were at the time with handling a video camera, and even with audio, as experienced as I was with audio, each time you do something you grow more. If people like Andrea and myself and our 2 daughters can do that, anybody in this room can do anything. And all you need is the ideas and the time and the interest and the passion to do this stuff and actually learn as you go. Because for me, it's the product gives me chills, but the process is invigorating and enlightening and inspiring, more so even than the process. But the other thing that I thought was really important in this video, and I didn't know it at the time when I produced it, and until I was kind of skimming through and I knew that I wanted to use this particular video for it, is where I said at the end that our Rock Stars of Reading trip wasn't just about being on vacation, it was about participating. And one thing I get from this conference, not just coming to this conference and being a part of it and participating in it, but also the common theme that we hear is being a part of that engagement, part of the content creation, part of that ecosystem of content creator and audience. Anthony talked about the fish concert and the interaction there. And I think it's the participation part of what we do. As much as it's authentic and passion, all that stuff, you have to be part of it. Be part of the process, not just part of the product.